Hello, what's happening?
Test one.
All right, Ian and I continue to practice our far off yet dream, I think, of being morning drive DJ, shock jock, whatevers.
By morning, you mean like 11 a.m. because this is about the time when my brain starts to function.
I will say that if you want to do that, you have to start at 6 to 9. That's when it happens. But
Dreams
not here on
over.
the webs. It happens whenever. Okay, cool. We're ready to go. So let's. What is the topic today? So here we're gonna do a shorty. We are gonna have a contest. There's a few of you in the live stream. We're gonna do a brainstorm for a future podcast episode, and the title and the topic is this: 5 reasons, or is now a great time to start a new internet business, or 5 reasons now is a perfect time. We're gonna sort of brainstorm some notes that we put down. We have 4, and if you have a 5th, you get a virtual high five. Sound good?
At the end. Yes.
Yeah. So this is all thanks to an email we received from a listener named Lauren. He mentioned that he had read a bunch of our articles. Some people still read articles. He had listened to a bunch of our podcasts, and he was curious as if now is still a good time to start a productized service, especially in the marketing space. And he also asked what would be some good beginner location independent business models to look into at this time. And I sort of thought about this email a little bit, and I thought about this idea out there. Like a lot of us have been saying, like when things go down, like that's the best time to do things. That where does the rubber meet the road? And these 4 points, hopefully we can find some rubber meeting the road. Sound good, boss man?
Yes.
All right. All right, so here's the 4 points, and then we're going to get into the productized marketing thing at the very, very end. So,
cool.
The first thing I believe now is a wonderful time to start a business is that the cost of doing business, or the CODIP, as I'm trying to say, has completely changed. If you think about things like building IP, creative products, projects, staffing costs, all this kind of stuff, we're talking about 50 cents on the dollar right now in terms of people sitting around wondering how they're going to make money. Well, if you have something clear that you need to get done that's valuable, you can get it for 50 cents on the dollar right now.
We don't talk a lot about building brick and mortar businesses because that's just not what we're into. But I had this idea of, it's every entrepreneur's dream to at some point start a restaurant or a t-shirt business.
Hell yeah.
And don't do it, number one.
Yeah, don't do it.
But I was just thinking about restaurants for a long time. Like there's going to be these commercial kitchens, and there's going to be like food distribution from these kitchens.
Yeah.
Like delivery style. Share a kitchen, and then from there they deliver out their food. So it might not be a need for like a physical location anymore. In Austin, food trucks. And some of them started very small, like one food truck made really good food, and now they have like 5 different locations, physical locations. So it's a great way to like stair step your way into a real restaurant is to start a food truck. And I was just thinking about this concept of a restaurant. Like the barriers to entry is, if you're not in Austin and you don't have a food truck, are very high, right? Like you got to have the bricks and mortar, you got to sign a lease, you got to tons of overhead. But these days,
you can't have like a criminal record. Or
can't have a criminal record.
Yeah.
But I was thinking now is the perfect time to start a restaurant if you actually want to start a restaurant, and all you do is delivery.
Yeah.
Right? So you can almost like start in your house. I mean, some quasi illegal because you don't have a proper license or whatever. But those are the kinds of things that you do when you start a business. You do quasi shady things sometimes, right? But the cost of business has never. Point being, the cost of business has never been lower right now.
Yeah.
And there's a real opportunity. You don't have to fill tables in a restaurant per se.
Yeah.
Like you could start a delivery service with your restaurant.
You know, and here's the thing: like people talk about a market. Like all a market is a collective belief system. 1,000 true fans. Well, if you have 1,000 customers that have this collective belief system that one thing's valuable, then you can have a sustainable business on your hands. And in the case of hard trying times, the collective belief systems get reevaluated, and people might want to completely reevaluate. For example, when we started our valet parking podium business, which was a steel furniture business, At the time, the products were all made in like a local factory by local California workers, and it was USA made, stamped and sealed when you bought it and sent out. And I think people in our market were willing to take a second look as like, maybe we should get something from China. Maybe it should be pack up in an efficient box. Like, they were willing to take a second look at what they had always done. And certainly you're seeing that right now in the time of COVID. So that's the number one reason. Again, we're looking for the number 5 from someone in the chat. The cost of doing business has changed. Number 2 reason, in our community, the cash still exists. Okay. Just because a lot of people's businesses going haywire overnight, a lot of people are losing their jobs, and a lot of us are just on this kind of permanent snow day. It doesn't mean that the cash reserves that so many small business entrepreneurs have built up, in some ways, you still have the same access to that. And I think that's what I'm saying is like, nothing's really changed for a lot of us, like in terms of dry powder. And as someone just starting out, for someone sitting around dry powder, they might have less business opportunities to invest it in right now, because it's a lot of like distress stuff coming through. Like, oh, I want to pay my employees. I want to bridge through the pandemic. But what about like, I want to start the restaurant that does something totally and incredibly unique. And so in other words, like if I look around at like the small investor community that we have access to, like their purview hasn't really changed here. They're just looking for opportunities that are sort of changing with the times and that look really cool. And I think now's a better time than ever to get access to that investment.
Yeah, that might not be the case 12 months from now. If this continues, people might start to get a little bit worried about it. But the circles that we're running in right now, there's a couple things going on. One is like people are worried about there's two different camps I want to talk about that people have been writing to us. Chances are that your business has gone up. There's a good chance of that.
A lot.
Because people are spending a lot more time shopping online because they don't want to go to physical stores. So we're seeing that happen. If you're running a consulting business or something that's maybe less essential, seeing those go down overnight almost. Some of them by 50% or more. So those people are trying to look to say, like, how can I survive? How can I cover my costs? How can I pay my rent? And they're kind of scrambling to figure out, how am I going to be able to make this work? And then you got the e-commerce guys, which are like, hey man, I got a different problem. Like, I can't get enough product from China because these factories have shut down. How can I grow through this time? And then you got the investor side, I think, which is people just waiting around to see what's going to happen. I don't think it's like the best opportunity ever to like swoop in and be a shark and say like, hey, I'm going to, take 50% of your business and cover your payroll for three months or whatever. I don't think that's the best strategy, but I am starting to hear about that. I think one of the strategies that I have heard about, we were talking to a friend in Spain, and he was looking to purchase some expensive assets. And his strategy is basically like, look, a lot of people are holding things that they might not want to hold from three or 4 months from now. And so starting to get in their ear like, hey man, are you really sure you want to be holding on to that business or that asset? Because we're not sure. There might be a lot of volatility coming down the pike. I can maybe help you out with that. This is something that you're already thinking about getting rid of. Like, give me a call.
Yeah.
And that's not a situation where you're going to get like 50% off. That's a situation where you might get 10, 20, 30% off retail prices, right? But it's not a bad strategy. I mean, waiting till the bottom hits, I think, as like an investor is it's risky. I've never been able to time that. I think if you can get a good value on something though, now might be the time.
Yeah. Well, and also, but the concept of the episode is from the starting of the business, from the starting side.
Yeah. And if you're talking about starting a business, goes back to your point about like now the costs have never been lower, right? The cost for contractors and employees have never been lower because maybe some of them are out of work. The cost for some of these ads, I actually haven't talked to anybody, but my suspicion is that like ad prices have gone down.
Right.
Pretty much overnight. Because if you're a big business and you're competing on these key terms, right? It's like all of a sudden, whoa, I'm pulling back. I'm in survival mode.
I'll tell you the metaphor of your pitch for getting access to this investor cash has completely changed in the past few weeks. Whereas a few months ago, it's like there's all this cash in the marketplace, and investors are just trying to dump as much money into small business as possible. All you got to be is a wave surfer. You got to show up and be like, this wave's incredible, give me some money, you own part of the company, we're all going to make money, it's incredible. And all those requests have completely dried up except for bridge loans for e-commerce companies. So now all of a sudden the metaphor is you're the surfer who's dip diving underneath the wave or whatever. You're saying, look, what an incredible opportunity. Everybody's falling. Chicken Little is coming down. I got a way to come at a completely different cost of doing business, and I'm willing to sit at home and bootstrap it myself or with a small team. So again, the cash still exists. That's an opportunity. Okay, so number one, cost of doing business has changed. Number two, the cash still exists.
Jonathan says, I heard Facebook ads in some niches are cheaper by 80%. Yeah, that's kind of my guess too. I'm like waiting for the Hacker News articles to come out and people starting to write. You know, that's where I get most of that information. Is like I'm spending 80% less and getting 100% more clicks kind of titles.
So we got 2 more points, and then we're going to see if we can get a 5th from the chat. Again, the topic is 5 reasons, but we only got 4. That now is a perfect time to start a business. Number 3 rather, anti-fragile, this concept of anti-fragility, it works or it doesn't in times of upheaval. And so pivot and go. Okay, so this concept of anti-fragility is this. What's the opposite of a fragile business? You see, like, typically most of us organize businesses around this concept of robustness. It's got to, be big and solid and strong and healthy, and it just motors along no matter what happens. But then things get disrupted, like happened in the past few weeks, and you notice the concepts of both fragility and anti-fragile. So if you had a fragile business, you might not have known it until a few weeks ago. You might have thought you were pursuing a great opportunity, but boom, that opportunity is gone for the next few years.
House flipping. I'm thinking about those guys right now. It's like, you talked to a house flipper 3 months ago, in this bull market. It's like, dude, I've been flipping houses for 10 years, remodeling. I mean, the market's just going boom, 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 boom. I'm watching Redfin every day, to see, like, it's like, man, there's not a lot of availability right now.
Now you look at the opposite side of the token, you look at people selling home fitness gear, like yoga equipment, yoga training. Probably, I don't know anybody in the pornography market, but I'm assuming that they're just dancing on their desks right now. But these kind of industry, board games, e-commerce, like now all of a sudden they discover they have anti-fragility. It's like, I was running just a little board game business and boom, disruption. And now all of a sudden my sales are 3 or 4 times. So again, these times expose your hand. This is the moment in the poker game when you lay out your chips and you see it for what it is. And that makes it a great opportunity to actually say, okay, I was running a fragile business, and that's okay. Like, it's not, so it doesn't say something about your identity. You don't know these things. The concept of anti-fragility doesn't mean that you can predict it. It just means that you try to plan for it and stuff. You put a bunch of little bets down, but hey, it took off or it didn't, boom. And I think that kind of reality check makes right now a great time to start a new business and that's my 3rd point.
I'm thinking about like tires, car metaphor. You get a new set of tires, you're driving, it's sunny out for a week, and you're like, this is great, man. These are the best handling tires I ever had.
Yeah.
All of a sudden it rains and you're like, whoop. and you're like, wow, I guess these tires aren't so great in the wet, but they are great in the dry. So what do? You slow down. In the wet. You figure it out. And some of these businesses are going to slow down a lot. And maybe what you're saying is true, which is like, hey man, this is actually not the business I want to be in, because when any kind of volatility hits, I mean, we've seen like basically 0 volatility the last 10 years. Yeah. When any kind of volatility hits, like, I'm screwed, or like my back's up against the wall. So maybe I got to get a little bit more cash reserves. Maybe I got to do what you're recommending, which is like pivot into something else. Maybe I really like my business. It's okay that it went down 50%, but I now I know that about this business. Like, when the market does this is what happens. And that's like when you have a business that survives decades and downturns and things like that, you have to be able to adapt. And it's not to say that like you can't own a consulting business in times of good and bad. It's just you have to adapt. It doesn't always work well when it's down, but it doesn't mean that it can't work at all.
Yeah, totally. By the way, this is going to happen again. Anybody's out there. And that is related to our 4th point, why now is a great time to start a business, which is those businesses that are responsible survive and have a chance of winning. It's easy to be responsible now, because now we really know what responsible feels like. You have to look at that P&L. Am I going to be able to afford it? Where are my dollars and cents going? What does my aspirational marketing spend look like right now versus stuff that's bringing sales in the front door? Now, feel that feeling. That's how you should always feel when you're running a business. So in other words, like, this is an awesome gut check for building sustainable, profitable businesses rather than capitalizing on froth, just getting sales in the door. And yeah, back to our original questioner, Lauren, asking about productized marketing services. One of the things that made me think about, Lauren, is like, yeah, you can have these kinds of super high dollar SEO monthly, and you're going to get your response in a year, and every good business should make this investment and stuff. And like, that's your sales pitch. And like, okay, that might be the sort of service that works really well, depending on your relationship with your clients in an upturn. But right now it's not looking so great.
Can you imagine that pitch though right now? Like, just it's so hard to put ourselves in this situation. Like, you almost have to wait until you're in this situation, because if you gave that pitch in like good times,
well,
I still have a hard time even grokking it, right?
That's the kind of pitch that, you would hear on the internet going out to things like, local steak joints and stuff like that, and
Yeah.
dentists and stuff, and they're all getting crushed. So now maybe you take the same kind of method and you twist it up and you send it off to e-commerce folks who want to take advantage of the all-time low Facebook ads, and become something more essential than this kind of, hey, let's pad up your nest for the next few years or whatever. Instead, become a more fundamental service and say, I'm going to manage all your accounts for you. And you were paying somebody a full-time wage to do it, but my firm's going to do it for $1,200 a month. And, you're going to be plugged into us as a fundamental service, as opposed to a pad the nest kind of marketing service.
This is certainly a great time to practice calibration and pivoting, because I'm just listening to some of these like messages that I heard 3 months ago. Like you're saying, it's like, hey, you guys really need to beef up your ad spend. Like, this is the time. Like, we're in a great market here. Like, how I can increase your sales by 10%. That would just fall on deaf ears right now. It's not increase your sales by 10%. It's like how can I help you survive? Yeah. How can I help your business pivot?
And the reality is there's tons of productized services that can help people survive. So yeah, you have to calibrate. And that's why I do think there's still a great time to start a productized service business, because you can pivot what you're doing over a weekend, and you can still retain your other clients and all the resources that you've built up underneath that previous cash flow. So yeah, Lauren, I think still the 4 reasons suggest now is a great time to start a business. And, forget about all that, but think about just the psychological reasons right now. You want to plan for a better future than maybe you planned for in the last 10 years. You got a lot of time to reevaluate the very questions of our society and being, and what you're doing with your life and everything. I think that this now is an awesome opportunity we're experiencing an extreme experience right now. It's absolutely unprecedented. And it's like a really cool time to like step up for yourself and to say, the next time something like this happens, because it will, I'm going to be better prepared. I'm going to feel good about what I did with the last 10 years if I do get sick and die. These are all relevant questions, and now's a great time to ask them. And so I think from a psychological perspective, kind of emerging from the lockdown with all the spare time, everybody else is playing games, screwing around, wasting time. Well, maybe you're not. You're watching this live stream and you're thinking like, I'm watching this little homegrown podcast where a small group of people actually care about what I care about, which is personal financial freedom. And they have an insight into how these ventures get made and how they survive these sorts of things. And I'm going to freaking do it myself. And I think that's rad. Do we got a 5th point from the audience?
We're looking for it right now. If you guys have a 5th point in why now is the best time or a great time to start a business, just want to mention Taylor Banks and Andrew Mead in the conversation. Andrew says, I've been teaching programming for 5 years, and the numbers have been ticking up over the last couple months. People have more time and want to use it to reinvent themselves. Great time to teach. I agree with that.
Yeah.
Again, this is the time. You're sitting at home, everybody's hands are underneath their butt, trying to figure out what's going on. Great time to take a course. Great time to create a product too.
Yeah.
If you have a consulting service or you have any kind of service, you have an idea, because hopefully that's the point of your service in my mind, is that it's going to turn into a product eventually, because products scale in my mind better than services do. So if you have yourself a little service and you're thinking like, okay, I've got an idea for a product, now's a great time
Yeah.
to figure out what that product
this
is
is
going
like
to
an
be.
inventor's holiday right here.
It really is.
It's a cool time.
So 5th point, if you have it, why now would be a great time to start a business. We'll read it out and we'll discuss it, and you'll get a virtual high five.
6 foot away, virtual high five. Let's see if we have any other questions coming.
Dan, I am happy about, we went out for a bike ride the other day, and I'm happy to see that Austin has finally like gotten the message. We went for a bike ride like a week and a half ago, and it was like people everywhere. It seems like people.
Do you think it's
started
ethical to go for a bike ride? Because I've heard some people, in Barcelona, my cycling buddies there, they're not allowed to go on bike rides. And so for me, if I wasn't able to go on this bike ride every day, that would really suck. I really don't envy my friends who are locked down in bigger cities where you have a heightened sense of communal responsibility and everything. I don't think we've endangered anybody really. I suppose you can
I think the 6 foot rule applies, outside.
Yeah.
But I think on a bike it's like 20 feet, because you're flying through the air. You got the droplets again, so you got to be mindful of those droplets. I think it's okay as long as you're really practicing social distancing out there. And there is going to be an element of mental health, which I'm not advocating like going to Target or anything like that to save your mental health, but I think exercise is a good use of time and energy outside.
Totally.
All right. So nobody's chimed in with the 5th point. I think that's okay.
That's our job. 4 points is good enough.
Yep.
Thank you for helping us hash out the basics of what might one day become a Tropical MBA podcast episode. It's cool that you guys come by to hang out and do this. We're just hanging out here at the Podshop at Ian's place, kicking around business ideas, doing a lot of kind of shopping online, really looking for like where the moves are in terms of like what assets are going up and down, and especially like hard assets. I'm very curious about, cars, trucks, homes, jewelry.
RVs. Yep.
They're hitting the market like crazy. Who's surprised there?
Well, you're watching it. The real reason for doing this isn't necessarily to buy stuff.
Exactly.
I mean, it's to see what the canary in the coal mine is to see how people are actually behaving. It's like once you put that thing for sale at a certain price, like it's because you have to, maybe it's because you want to, but just watching the volume and how people behave is interesting. Because,
sorry.
Yeah, because people can say that they're fine and then they're putting all their assets for sale. The other thing is I think everybody's trying to parse through this federal, I'll call it grant money, because they get back at all. Yeah. Everybody's trying to parse through that and figure out like when that's going to apply for this yet from getting this money into our accounts. And look, we've already gone through one rent cycle starting basically tomorrow. And it wouldn't surprise me if there was another rent cycle. And I'm hearing stories of people just abandoning their commercial rents.
There's a lot of commercial rent abandonment
in California. I think I read, and don't quote me on this, but I think I read that there's going to be a law or a rule that says you can abandon your rent for up to 3 months. Well, my question to them is, are they going to get mortgage protection for 3 months? That's not clear. So the chips haven't even all talking about this and speculating and whatnot, but the rubber is going to meet the road real quick. And that's the reason why I watch these online market. Who's hurting and how much?
Do you remember that scene in The Big Short when the hedge fund guys from New York City, they fly down to Florida? Is one of the best mortgage sales guys. And they're all excited talking about the cars that they bought and how they're selling all this stuff. And that moment when the hedge fund investors realize total bullshit bubble because of these two guys, the anecdotes that they heard from two guys with gold chains on or whatever. That's what it feels like when you go to places like Craigslist or go to places like the Dynamite Circle. You kind of dig around and you talk to people, and you just see these tea leaves. You see the early indicators of like what's actually happening, and then this kind of collective understanding follows later, either that, whether that's a market or whether that's a major news outlet or whether it's some magazine that tries to analyze shit. Like all these people are super far behind like whoever you're talking to on the other end of the phone that's selling their boat, and why are they selling it,
Yep.
and who owns that real. It's been fascinating to sort of try and get a sense for what these opportunities are going to be. Of course, nobody knows, but hopefully we all can take advantage of some of them and build healthier businesses going forward.
All right, Dan, till tomorrow. This has been a shorty.
Thanks for joining us, everybody. We're going to be back same time tomorrow because we have to be here. So we're going to be here with you. Thanks for joining us.